Hello everyone, welcome back to another lore video, where I break down the story of obscure Japanese horror games. It's been a while, hasn't it? Well, you are in for a treat today. Today, we will be diving into the story of Dear X, watching the story unfold as a young Japanese woman realizes that she's being stalked by an unknown person. Will the protagonist find out who her stalker is before it's too late? We're gonna find out. This game was developed by Satsuki no Yume, who is a very talented artist and game developer. I highly recommend you check out their website, which I'll put in the description below, to explore their impressive art catalog and their growing collection of games. The story for this game is wild, but it was an enjoyable journey, so I recommend if this game interests you at all, you play it yourself before I spoil the entirety of the story for you. The download link for the game is below. Unfortunately, it is only in Japanese as of this video publishing, but you can still use our blog of the English translation if you'd prefer to try this game for yourself. The link for our translation will also be in the description below. Before we begin, just a quick but obvious spoiler warning. Last chance if you want to play this game yourself before I spoil the entirety of the story. Just make sure you come back to watch this video afterwards. Just to note, this game has multiple endings with one very bad ending, one bad ending, and one good ending. I will be discussing the story for just the good ending, since it appears, at least to me, to be the true ending. On top of that, the bad ending and the even worse ending have a ton of overlap with the good ending, just a much worse and much more miserable outcome. So for this video, we will be discussing the story for the good ending only. Okay, with that out of the way, let's dive into the story of Dear X. Dear X opens with a young woman standing in her bathroom. A blackened out figure runs towards her, a slicing sound is heard, and the screen fades to black. The game opens again with a young woman named Tsukasa, watching the news on the TV in her small apartment. She learns that a woman was murdered last night at home by a male assailant. This alarms Tsukasa, who is a woman living alone. She reminds herself to be more vigilant about locking her doors and windows, just in case. This is when Tsukasa gives us a little background about herself. She's a second-year university student who has been living alone since she started going to college. On top of living alone, she also supports herself with a part-time job at a nearby convenience store and has good grades. Overall, Tsukasa seems like a very normal, very typical college student. But Tsukasa has no more time to dwell on her life story, since her work shift begins soon. She needs to get ready for it or she'll be late. Tsukasa decides that she should make herself a meal first. For the best outcome for Tsukasa, she chooses to make herself omu rice, or rice omelet. It's delicious if you've never tried it before. While she eats, someone rings her doorbell. Tsukasa jumps up to get the door, only for the person on the other side to hit the doorbell over and over, as if frantically trying to get into her apartment. Tsukasa, now rightfully on edge, looks through the peephole on the front door, but there's no one there. Maybe someone was messing with her, a kid most likely. Tsukasa cracks open the door and glances out. Yeah, there's no one there, but it looks like something is now in her mailbox. Tsukasa's hand touches something sticky in the mailbox, and she quickly retracts her hand, finding strawberry jam all over her fingers. It seems like someone put a box of strawberries in her mailbox, but they fell out of the mailbox, getting smashed and making a huge mess. A note is also inside the mailbox, which says, "To you, my love, I give you your favorite, strawberries." Tsukasa's stomach turns as she reads a note, remarking how this isn't the first time she's received a gift from an unknown sender. About a week ago, this gifter began dropping off gifts for Tsukasa, which included flowers, food, and even skimpy lingerie, with a note telling her to try it on. Gross. But it seems Tsukasa has a stalker. They know where she lives, and it looks like they know her schedule, since they dropped it off right before she went to work. Tsukasa racks her brain, trying to figure out who would do this, and how they learned she likes strawberries. So it must be someone in Tsukasa's life, either from school, work, or some other aspect she hasn't mentioned. But Tsukasa has no idea who it could be. No one around her acts strangely enough to do something so gross. Tsukasa throws away the gift and the card, cleans out her mailbox, and locks up her apartment before she heads to work. Now, I know some of you are screaming at the screen because Tsukasa just threw away evidence of her stalker, but let's remember that Tsukasa is afraid and not thinking clearly, and laws across the world for victims of stalking are pretty awful, to put it lightly. In the US alone, most police are not able to do much other than take a report until the stalker actually does something physical to the victim. Yeah, it's as stomach dropping as you think it is, and it explains why Tsukasa is quick to get rid of anything that would remind her of what happened. Instead, Tsukasa walks to work, only blocks from where she lives. As she enters, she says hi to her coworker manning the register, then goes into the back room to grab her work apron. In the back room is her manager and her other coworker, Aso. Aso seems overly conscious of Tsukasa and is overly accommodating to her, but nothing that's concerning at the moment. Tsukasa grabs her work apron, throws it on over her clothes, and mans the other cash register. Unfortunately, it's a very slow day, so Tsukasa decides to do some restocking. She lets Aso, who is now manning the other cash register, know what she's doing, and he applauds her for her work ethic. Like a true angry boomer, he says that the other kids her age don't want to work, they just want to sit behind the counter on their phones. Tsukasa is clearly uncomfortable by his flattery, but thanks him anyway. He smiles at her, telling her she's a good child, which, thanks, I guess? When Tsukasa goes to the back to grab the things that need to be restocked, she can speak to the manager, who tells her to come see him if she has any issues. Tsukasa debates mentioning the stalker to him, but decides it's best to leave it for now. At least she knows he can be a resource if she needs it. With that out of the way, Tsukasa restocks numerous items in the store, and before she knows it, her shift is over. Tsukasa heads outside, ready to head home, when she hears someone calling out behind her. It's Aso. He offers to walk her home since it's so late. Tsukasa tries to politely refuse, but Aso insists. Aso actually goes around her, heading towards her apartment. And Tsukasa is confused, asking Aso how he knows where she lives. She never mentioned where she lived, much less had him over. But Aso explains that he knows the general direction she lives because it's the direction she always takes when she leaves work. Now, this is plausible, but it's still a bit creepy how he noticed and wouldn't take no for an answer, even if on the off chance that his intentions are good. Aso begins walking again, and Tsukasa has no choice but to walk with him. Together, they arrive at her apartment complex. Aso mentions in passing how they should get a meal together sometime, then leaves to Tsukasa's relief. Tsukasa heads inside her apartment and rests for the day. Time flies by, and before she knows it, it's the next day. Tsukasa has classes this morning, so she has to head to school. The walk is uneventful, thankfully, and soon Tsukasa arrives at her college. Heading inside, she can speak to her fellow classmates before the lecture. This is when Shiho, Tsukasa's friend, shows up. Shiho calls out to Tsukasa, catching her attention. Right behind Shiho is Toma, Tsukasa's other friend. Tsukasa gives more background to these characters, mentioning that all of them became friends after taking the same class together in college. Shiho and Tsukasa actually knew each other before college because they went to the same high school. However, they were in separate classes and they never really spoke to each other prior to college. Tsukasa is happy to have them as friends, especially with everything going on at home. She does contemplate telling them about her stalker, but she changes her mind at the last moment. Both Shiho and Toma get annoyed because they can tell that Tsukasa is hiding something from them, but they leave it alone for now. After Tsukasa's classes are over, Tsukasa says goodbye to her friends and heads to the entrance of the university, ready to head home. Just as Tsukasa is set to leave, Toma calls out to her, walking up to her. In his hands is her phone. Tsukasa must have forgotten it in the lecture hall. Tsukasa is shocked. Sure, she put it in her bag, but Toma has it in his hands, so that can't be the case, right? Either way, he gives it back to her while chiding her to be more careful. After, he heads back to the lecture hall, and Tsukasa begins her walk home. It's another uneventful walk, until Tsukasa passes by the convenience store and hears footsteps following her. She stops and turns around, but no one is there. Tsukasa's on edge, but continues walking anyway. As she walks further, Tsukasa hears the footsteps again. Someone is definitely following her. Could it be the stalker? Tsukasa isn't sure, so she races home, locking the door behind her as she tries to calm down. She'll take a bath, she decides, in an attempt to make herself feel better. She opens the drawer under her rice maker, where she stores all the keys to her apartment. So yes, Tsukasa locks the interior rooms of her apartment with keys. I'm not quite sure why, but I assume it has something to do with the stalker, maybe? Unfortunately for Tsukasa, it seems a bulb has burnt out since she's been gone. Tsukasa exits the bathroom, grabs a spare light bulb from the kitchen and a chair to stand on, and re-enters the bathroom. In the dark, Tsukasa successfully switches out the light bulb, turning on the light switch to marvel at her work. It's here that Tsukasa realizes there's someone standing outside her apartment, staring in from the bathroom window. They take off before Tsukasa can say anything, but Tsukasa is rightfully rattled by it. She tries to reason with herself, telling herself she must have been seeing things, but seeing how someone had followed her home and Tsukasa does have a stalker, it seems maybe not. Tsukasa decides to shower anyway, and after she's done, she changes into her clothes and heads to her bedroom. Before Tsukasa can enter her room though, she hears a sound coming from her front door. When she goes to check, she realizes something is in her mailbox. This confirms that someone was indeed following and peeping on Tsukasa, and whoever it was is her stalker. Tsukasa steels her nerves and goes to the front door to check her mailbox. I will warn you, this next part is grotesque, because inside the mailbox is a box full of dead, mutilated mice. Nothing a sane person would even think to do. Tsukasa is horrified and sick from the sight, choosing instead to look at the note that came with the box. The note says, "I love you," over and over again on the top portion of the note. The bottom of the note says, "Since you love animals so much, I will give you a cute little animal that you know and that's easy to catch. I hope you enjoy it." Unlike Tsukasa's previous gifts, this one is cruel and only meant to emotionally torture Tsukasa, which is much different than the previous gifts Tsukasa has received in the mail. It seems the stalker is getting angry with Tsukasa. Tsukasa is sickened. Who would enjoy something like this? It's here that Tsukasa realizes someone is outside her apartment, staring in from her peephole. They wanted to see her reaction to their gift. Tsukasa looks at the peephole, but now nothing is out there. Tsukasa looks a moment longer, when suddenly a green eye looks back into the peephole at her. Tsukasa runs away from the peephole, throwing the gift away before she runs to her room, hiding under her bed covers. The next day, Tsukasa wonders if it was all just a bad dream, but she knows what happened was reality. She can't escape it, no matter how hard she tries. Tsukasa contemplates telling someone or going to the police, but she quickly rejects it, thinking it would do no good. She doesn't know who is doing it, and they haven't actually done anything to her directly, just terrorizing her through her mailbox. Because of this, Tsukasa decides to head to class like normal. But she has a hard time staying awake, getting hardly any sleep last night, and during class, Tsukasa falls asleep at her desk. Shiho, sitting next to Tsukasa, notices Tsukasa fell asleep and tries to wake her up. But it's no use, Tsukasa is out cold. When Tsukasa wakes up, Shiho smiles, telling Tsukasa that the lecture just ended. Tsukasa is shocked, surprised that she slept during class at all, much less through an entire lecture. But Tsukasa does note to herself that she's been very tired lately, even though most nights she gets enough sleep. It must be because of the stalker, Tsukasa thinks to herself. She's so worried about this strange, menacing person following her, she hasn't had any time to really rest. Shiho, seeing Tsukasa's mood drop, offers her a piece of chocolate. It's a friendly gift for Valentine's Day. Tsukasa appreciates the gesture, promising Shiho that she will make some chocolate for her in return. Shiho tells her to enjoy it, since she added 3 special ingredients to the chocolate. What they are, though, is a surprise. Tsukasa has a bad feeling about the chocolates after hearing that, summing it up to Shiho not being a good cook. In fact, Shiho's cooking is so bad, it makes you feel like you're dying. Spooky. Suddenly, Toma's phone goes off, startling Tsukasa. Shiho yells at Toma, asking him if he's been bothering Tsukasa at all recently. Shiho wonders aloud if Toma is just upset because he didn't get any chocolate from Tsukasa. Toma denies it immediately, getting flustered. He then turns to Tsukasa, asking her if she's okay. She's very pale. Tsukasa shakes her head, telling both of them it's nothing. Shiho tries to push the issue, but Tsukasa refuses to budge, insisting that it's nothing. Finally, Toma tells Shiho to stop. If Tsukasa doesn't want to share, she doesn't have to. Shiho gets annoyed by this, insisting that she's trying to help, but Toma tells her to keep her nose out of other people's business, which is honestly really hilarious. A verbal fight between Shiho and Toma begins to break out, but Tsukasa breaks it up immediately, begging them not to fight. Toma then tells Tsukasa to tell them what's going on then, if she wants the fighting to stop. Tsukasa finally agrees, but Toma tells her that she doesn't actually have to talk about what's going on if she really doesn't want to. Tsukasa agrees to tell them anyway, since they're obviously worried. Tsukasa then tells them about everything that has happened the last week, including all the gifts in the mailbox and the person following her home. After Tsukasa is done talking, Shiho responds by assuring Tsukasa that she, as in Shiho, is not the stalker. And thank you, Shiho, I'm sure Tsukasa feels much better now. Toma asks Tsukasa if she's contacted the police yet, but she hasn't. Shiho asks her if she's told her family, but Tsukasa again says no. Her parents are busy with work, and her younger brother is preparing for his college entrance exams. To Tsukasa, it's a horrible time to bother them. Shiho seems surprised that Tsukasa has a younger brother. Before she asks Tsukasa if she has any leads on who the culprit might be, it will help them figure out who the stalker is. But again, Tsukasa has nothing but guesses. She does mention her co-worker Aso, though. It's pretty obvious that he has a crush on her, and he now knows where she lives for sure. He easily could have followed her home from the convenience store. Toma agrees, but Shiho seems skeptical. Shiho tells Tsukasa that they will try to walk her home as much as possible anyway, and Tsukasa can text them if anything happens. Tsukasa seems reassured by the conversation, cracking a smile. Eventually, the three head over to the cafeteria for lunch. Shiho tries to get a conversation going, but Tsukasa is too depressed to speak. In response, Toma tries to cheer her up, giving her a strawberry from his dessert. But how did Toma know that Tsukasa likes strawberries? Granted, if they've eaten lunch together before, it wouldn't be hard to notice. But could there be something else there? Don't forget the stalker gave Tsukasa some strawberries as well, noting that they noticed they were her favorite snack. More time passes, and Tsukasa leaves campus, heading home alone after Shiho and Toma are not available to walk back with her. Tsukasa is on edge walking past the convenience store, where she was followed the day before. Still, Tsukasa holds her head high as she hurries home. As she passes the store, she hears a voice call out to her. Unfortunately, Tsukasa stops and turns towards the voice. It's Aso. He asks her if she's heading home after class, which she reluctantly tells him yes. She then asks him if he's been working at the convenience store. Why else would he be around here? Yeah, he responds. He just got off his shift and now he's heading home. Oh, great. However, in a more disturbing twist, Aso thinks to himself, relieved that Tsukasa finally passed by, since he's been waiting around the convenience store all day just in hopes of seeing Tsukasa. Even better. Of course, he doesn't tell this to Tsukasa, but Tsukasa looks uncomfortable anyway. Aso then mentions that they had spoken a few days ago about how they should go get a meal together, aka Aso asked Tsukasa to go get a meal with him and she just kind of politely pushed it off. And then he asked Tsukasa if this would be a good day to go get that meal. Tsukasa remembers Toma telling her to be careful around Aso since he might be the stalker, and Tsukasa gets very uncomfortable and nervous. She needs to get out of this conversation as quickly as possible without angering Aso, since she doesn't know if he'll get angry and he does know where she lives. Tsukasa politely declines, telling him she has a ton of work she has to do. Maybe another day. But Aso doesn't take this for an answer, asking what she's doing. Why is she so busy? Tsukasa politely declines his invitation again, telling Aso she's got a lot to do today, so she has no time. Thankfully, Aso seems receptive this time, telling Tsukasa she's busy, then it can't be helped. Tsukasa sighs in relief. She's almost free. But then Aso's face suddenly turns dark, asking her what her plans are. They aren't with another guy, right? Tsukasa is stunned into silence by Aso's sudden change. He goes on, yelling at Tsukasa that he won't let her go out with some strange man without his permission, as if he's her father. It's as if Aso's floodgates of creepy obsession have broken open. With this behavior, maybe Aso is the stalker. Tsukasa asks Aso point blank if he was the one leaving her gifts in her mailbox. To Tsukasa's horror, he rejects doing it, but insists that if Tsukasa wants him to start leaving her gifts in her mailbox, he will. He knows where she lives after all. It would be easy enough to do. In fact, if she wanted him to give her attention, all she had to do was ask. She doesn't have to be lonely, not with him around. Tsukasa tries to refuse this offer, but he begins to rant at Tsukasa, telling her that other men are dirty and are trying to ruin her purity. Tsukasa is just like his daughter, so he'll protect her. He won't allow other filthy men near her. He will not allow it. Aso suddenly grabs Tsukasa by the arms, insisting that she listen to him. Seeing Tsukasa's face contort in sheer fear only makes Aso angrier, yelling at her not to be so scared, because yelling at a scared person is definitely going to make them less afraid. As strange and inappropriate as Aso's behavior towards Tsukasa is, it seems that Aso sees Tsukasa as a replacement daughter, replacing his estranged daughter. Aso snaps when he sees Tsukasa's scared expression because it reminds him of his own daughter's expression. You see, Aso and his wife recently divorced. After a nasty fight between the two, which his daughter witnessed, his daughter left home with her mother, Aso's ex-wife. However, instead of seeing how his angry outburst could scare someone, he instead chooses to double down, using Tsukasa like a stand-in daughter. The situation looks like it will escalate into violence, but thankfully Toma comes out of nowhere, pulling Tsukasa away from Aso while telling Aso to back off. Of course, as soon as someone who could physically take Aso steps in, Aso backs off, muttering that it isn't what it looks like. Aso then apologizes to Tsukasa, telling her that he lost his composure and he feels bad for scaring her. He then tells her he'll see her at work before he scurries away like a rat, notably not towards the convenience store or his house, but instead south. Toma checks in on Tsukasa, who is still shaken. Toma tells her that if it ever happens again, she should shout or try to get other people's attention, which, yes, I agree, but it can be difficult in the moment to have the correct response, especially with a mentally unwell man screaming in your face while physically restraining you. Tsukasa apologizes, but Toma corrects himself, telling her that he's not blaming her, he's just worried about her. Toma then insists that Aso must be Tsukasa's stalker and that they need to call the police immediately, but Tsukasa disagrees. Though Aso's behavior was at the bare minimum inappropriate and completely unacceptable, he had no idea about the gifts that Tsukasa was receiving, and he didn't look like he was lying about it either. Though he is definitely a creep, he isn't Tsukasa's stalker. Seeing Tsukasa mull over what happened, Toma offers to walk her home, which Tsukasa gratefully accepts. When they get to Tsukasa's apartment, Tsukasa asks Toma what he was doing on this side of town. He doesn't live over here. It's here that he gives Tsukasa a notebook. Inside are the lecture notes from the class she slept through. Though Tsukasa is grateful, she realizes the handwriting looks oddly familiar. And Toma went so far out of his way just to give her these notes where he could coincidentally save her from Aso. Tsukasa is suspicious of Toma, but doesn't say anything at the moment, choosing instead to keep her thoughts to herself and thank Toma instead. Instead of heading right into her apartment, Tsukasa decides to walk behind her apartment, looking at the area the stalker was hiding and peeping at her yesterday. If she's going to find out who her stalker is, she needs to find evidence. Maybe the stalker left something behind yesterday when they fled in a hurry. And Tsukasa's intuition is correct, because in the grass outside the back of her apartment, Tsukasa finds a contact lens. This cannot be a coincidence. This has to be from the stalker. Feeling a little confident with this evidence, Tsukasa heads inside and makes herself dinner. After she eats, Tsukasa remembers that Chiho told her to keep any evidence the stalker sends and decides to grab the note from the stalker from the trash. Suddenly, the screen fades to black, and the perspective switches to a young man named Yosuke. He stretches and sighs in relief. His college entrance exams are finished, so he can finally relax. Yosuke then notes to himself that he hasn't heard from his older sister lately. He assumes she didn't want to bother him while he was studying for his exams, but maybe it was something else. Before he can mull too long on it, his mother enters the room. She yells at him to clean his room, which is fair because his room is an absolute mess. And while he's at it, he can clean up his sister's room too. She's away at college, so it'd be nice of him to do that for her. Yosuke complains, but he doesn't have much of a choice, so he runs around his room, picking up the trash and empty soda cans, as well as organizing. Yosuke then moves to his sister's room, which is very tidy and empty, a stark contrast to her brother's room. While Yosuke tidies up, he notices a locked box on his sister's bookshelf. Curiosity gets the better of him and he tries to open it, but quickly finds it needs a code. One he doesn't know. Instead of going back and cleaning, Yosuke decides to try to find the code and open the locked box. I'm sure that his sister would appreciate him snooping this way. First, he tries his sister's birthday, then his birthday, but neither work. There is a hint to what the code is, though, on a piece of paper next to the box. Yosuke goes into the living room where the clue hints at. After some head-scratching puzzle solving, Yosuke finally gets the code, racing back to his sister's room to unlock the box. To Yosuke's immense disappointment, inside the box are only some photos, taken while Yosuke's sister was in high school. Unamused, Yosuke flips through the photos until he sees a few photos in particular that shock him. In these photos, the faces of one particular person are completely scratched out, making it impossible to tell who it used to be. Yosuke is disturbed, knowing that his sister would never do something like that. But why does she have the photos then? Suddenly, Yosuke's mom enters the room. She noticed Yosuke hasn't gotten any cleaning done, so she came to help him. While his mother is here, Yosuke reluctantly asks his mom if anything happened to his big sister while she was in high school. His mother falls silent, contemplating whether to tell him the truth or not, before she finally cracks and tells him the truth. When Yosuke's sister was in high school, there was a time she began to act strange. Yosuke was too busy with school activities to notice, but his sister's behavior alarmed their parents. Yosuke's sister would lock herself in her room for hours, mumbling to herself. She also had hallucinations. To their parents' concern, she was acting like a completely different person, almost like she had two different personalities. But one day, she just returned to being normal, so their parents left it alone. They were just relieved to have their daughter back, though they still don't know what triggered her strange behavior. It must have been something drastic, though, to have such a dramatic, negative change in personality and behavior. Yosuke's mother warns Yosuke not to bring it up to his sister, though. She's living a normal life now, so they don't want to do anything to trigger her. Of course, this is not the best approach to mental health crisis, but unfortunately, it seems Yosuke's parents are more concerned about keeping their daughter calm than actually helping her. This is foreshadowing of the horrible things that are going to come because of their decision and lack of action. Yosuke's mother leaves the room while Yosuke deals with the guilt of having his sister struggling so much with her mental health and him never noticing even though they lived in the same house. We leave Yosuke there to wallow in his guilt as the perspective switches back to Tsukasa. Remember, we left Tsukasa after she dug up the note from the stalker in the trash. Tsukasa is exhausted from a traumatic day she went through, so she goes to her room to go to sleep. But before she can sleep, her phone begins ringing. Tsukasa pulls out her phone and checks who it is, but it's a restricted number. Instead of letting it go to voicemail, Tsukasa answers it. The person calling doesn't say anything. They only breathe into the phone before abruptly hanging up. Tsukasa puts her phone down, wondering if it was a prank caller. She then checks the locks on all her doors and windows and goes to sleep. But a restful sleep isn't coming to Tsukasa. The screen flashes, and then what looks to be Tsukasa is awake, standing beside her bed. It's dark out, so it's still night, and she seems strange. She grabs a Polaroid camera from under her bed. Now, this part I have to explain a little bit. So this person looks like Tsukasa, but where the name usually is in the dialogue box is now replaced with question marks. So maybe it isn't Tsukasa. On top of that, this person uses the noun boku to refer to themselves. Boku is a masculine way in Japanese to refer to oneself, which Tsukasa as a young woman would never use, and she hasn't used it at all during the entirety of the game. But the strange person looks like Tsukasa. In a strange twist, they decide to head to the balcony first with the camera, but the balcony door is locked. They go to Tsukasa's key drawer and take out the balcony door key. Once on the balcony, they take several photos at many different angles. This is just getting stranger. They also check the garbage outside where the gifts had been disposed of. They look disturbed by what they find inside, as if they weren't expecting it. They then go around the house, taking photos of the fridge, front door, and other places in the apartment. Whatever they're doing here, it's very purposeful. The balcony, the fridge, the front door, all places Tsukasa had interacted with the stalker. They even take photos of the bedroom and the bathroom. But why? Who is this, and why are they taking these photos? And where is Tsukasa? It goes further. They go outside, putting a box inside Tsukasa's mailbox, along with a bouquet of flowers. The perspective switches back to Tsukasa. She's in her room after just waking up. She seems like her normal self. Tsukasa only has to go to class later in the afternoon today, so she decides to put herself to work. She'll copy Toma's notes he let her borrow, then she'll make some thank you chocolates for Shiho for Valentine's Day. Before Tsukasa can get started, though, her phone rings again. It's a restricted number again. With trembling hands, Tsukasa answers the phone. Silence on the other end of the line. It's disturbing, and most definitely her stalker. Tsukasa wonders how the stalker got her phone number. She never gave it out to anyone other than her family and her boss. Tsukasa decides answering their calls isn't helping her at all, so she decides to stop answering when they call. Before Tsukasa can start copying Toma's notes, she decides to open her childhood box from earlier. She forgot the code, but after a few guesses, it opens, revealing some origami and a toy mouse inside. For fun, she takes the toy mouse with her. Tsukasa then heads into the kitchen and makes a chocolate for Shiho. They turn out well, and Tsukasa hopes Shiho will like it. But making the chocolates took longer than Tsukasa was expecting. She has to quickly copy Toma's notes, make herself lunch, then hurry out the door with the borrowed notes and the chocolate if she's going to make it to class on time. But before she leaves, Tsukasa trepidly peeks into her mailbox. She needs to know what the stalker has done this time. To Tsukasa's horror, inside the mailbox are photos shoved carelessly inside. Tsukasa is rightfully horrified. Somehow the stalker got her house key and got into her house. There can be no other explanation, since Tsukasa has always triple-checked that all the doors and windows in her house are locked tight. Tsukasa also always carries her house key in her bag. Somehow, the stalker got close enough to get her key. Tsukasa's phone rings again. It's the restricted number yet again. Her stalker is watching her at the very moment. Tsukasa becomes distraught, throwing away the other gifts the stalker left her in the mailbox, only keeping the photos as evidence. Now feeling unsafe even in her own home, Tsukasa locks her front door and runs to the university. Tsukasa takes a seat in the cafeteria, contemplating what has happened. She has to find out who the stalker is soon, or she won't last much longer. The stalker is escalating in their actions, and a violent outcome is the only outcome unless Tsukasa can find out who is terrorizing her. She thinks, going through everyone she knows. It could be Aso or someone else entirely. Whoever it is, though, they know intimate parts of Tsukasa's life quite well. It has to be someone close to her. With not much else to go on, Tsukasa looks over the photos one by one. Tsukasa realizes they must have made a copy of her key because there was no evidence of a break-in. So someone got close enough to get her key, go copy it, then return with the key without Tsukasa realizing. That isn't something that would be easy to pull off. Could it have been Aso while she was at work? No, Tsukasa locks her bag with her house key in her work locker while at work, and she keeps the work locker key on her at all times. If someone took it, she would have known immediately. So someone got to Tsukasa's bag while she wasn't paying attention to it. It must have been while she was out of the house. But when would that have been? Tsukasa's face drops as she realizes the only time she left her bag alone was during the lecture when she accidentally fell asleep. That would have been the only time anyone could have gotten into her bag, copied her house key, and returned it to her bag without her noticing. But how could she know who was close to her bag then? It's not like there were cameras in the room or anything. Tsukasa flips through more photos, noticing one in her bedroom. In the photo was a picture of the clock. It says February 14th, 2:32 p.m. So whoever broke into her house did so on Valentine's Day during the afternoon. Though Tsukasa is pretty sure Aso wasn't the culprit, she can ask her manager if Aso was working that day and time, confirming Aso's whereabouts and removing all doubts of him being the stalker. Before Tsukasa knows it, it's time for her class. She really doesn't want to go, but what other choice does she have? She certainly doesn't want to go home. Tsukasa drags herself to the classroom just as the lecture starts. She takes her seat next to Shiho, just like she always does. Her professor, who is the same professor whose lecture she fell asleep in last time, ends the lecture early. Tsukasa decides to pass Toma and Shiho the chocolates she made at this time. Shiho takes hers with a smile, but Toma is talking to a friend when Tsukasa approaches. Toma turns anyway, and Tsukasa gives him the chocolates. He wonders out loud why she is giving him chocolates, since giving boys and men you know chocolates during Valentine's Day, in Japan at least, is usually a sign you like or even have a crush on them. Toma momentarily gets his hopes up before Tsukasa crushes them, telling him she's just giving him friendship chocolates as a thank you for all the help he's been giving her lately. Toma's friend laughs at Toma, joking with him that he got his hopes up for nothing, but Toma firmly denies this. He blushes with embarrassment. Still, Toma thanks Tsukasa while taking the chocolates, trying to save his crushed ego by asking Tsukasa if she did not give him chocolates with romantic intentions because she was worried he might reject her. Tsukasa rolls her eyes, saying nothing to this, so Toma tries to pick up the broken shards of his ego and thanks her again before returning to his conversation with his friend. So, what do you guys think? Who is the stalker? We have enough evidence to know who the stalker is, so who is your guess? Comment below with your guess right now. I want to hear your guys' thoughts. And of course, once you learn, please put a spoiler tag on your comment so as not to ruin the mystery for others who don't know yet. This is your last chance. Pause the video now and post your guess below. Okay, let's keep going. But it seems that Tsukasa's tricks aren't over yet. Remember that the stalker gave Tsukasa a gift of dead mice, so they must be comfortable around the mice, at least enough to capture them. Well, Tsukasa has found a way to find out if Toma really is the stalker. She places a toy mouse between Toma's feet while his back is turned to her, then calls to Toma, telling him to look at his feet. When he looks down, Toma screams in horror as tears spring to his eyes, so it seems Toma is afraid of mice. So afraid, in fact, that the mere sight of a fake one sends him into hysterics. Interesting. Tsukasa apologizes and tries to calm Toma down by telling him it's a fake mouse. Tsukasa even proves it to him by picking it up by the tail and letting it swing limply back and forth. Toma is amused though, telling her to take it away. It doesn't matter if it's real or fake, it looks like a mouse, so it's disgusting and needs to be removed from his sight. Toma's friend laughs at him again, calling him Doraemon, which is a character from a Japanese children's show. Toma goes off on his friend, telling his friend to respect Doraemon, since he is a great character that teaches many more lessons to children and adults alike. Now, this is a really refreshing side to see of Toma. Most of the time, Toma is kind of curt and rude, but it seems like he's really a big softie. If anything, it seems that Toma struggles to properly communicate his feelings instead of just being a jerk. Tsukasa then asks Toma if he's afraid of mice, which he indignantly answers with an embarrassed blush on his face. A little bit. Just a little bit, Toma? But we got the answer we needed, and so did Tsukasa. There is no way that Toma is a stalker, not someone who is terrified of mice and defends the honor of a character from a children's show. Tsukasa is surprised by this side of Toma, but also relieved to know that he isn't a stalker. But that doesn't answer the question of who got into Tsukasa's bag during the lecture when she fell asleep. But who could she ask about it? Who would have noticed? Everyone else would have been focused on the lecture. Well, everyone but the person facing the class at all times, teaching the lecture. If someone got close to Tsukasa, then left the room for a length of time, the professor definitely would have noticed. And he did let them out early since he has another class starting soon. If Tsukasa hurries, maybe she can speak to him before his next class starts. Tsukasa rushes over to the lecture hall, and inside is her professor, alone. Perfect, she made it just in time. Tsukasa approaches the professor, but he tells her whatever she has to say, it'll have to be quick. He's got another lecture coming soon. So Tsukasa comes right out with it, asking if anyone was acting strangely during yesterday's lecture. He says no, other than the one student who fell asleep during his lecture, which, ouch. Tsukasa takes it in stride though, apologizing, which reminds the professor of something. There was another girl. She began feeling sick during the middle of the lecture and left for some time, but returned to the lecture before it was over. It was a girl that always sits next to Tsukasa during lectures. Shiho. Tsukasa is stunned by this revelation. There is no way that Shiho is a stalker, right? This must be some weird misunderstanding. Tsukasa thanks the professor for his help anyway, then leaves the room. She begins making her way home, intent on making one more stop before she heads home, the convenience store where she works. She heads right to the back and speaks with the manager. He said she could speak to him if she had any issues, and well, this is an issue. After greeting the manager, Tsukasa asked him if Aso was working on Valentine's Day. He was, and his shift was 1 p.m. to 5 p.m.? Yes, the manager says. Did he leave it all or take a break at all during his shift? Nope, it was so busy yesterday at the store, Aso had no time to take a break the entirety of his shift. Tsukasa nods, thanking the manager before leaving the store, so this confirms it. It couldn't have been Aso either. Tsukasa begins walking home, mulling over everything she's learned. Suddenly, her phone rings. Tsukasa jumps, thinking it's a stalker, but it's a listed number, one she doesn't recognize. A voice calls out to Tsukasa across the street, and when she turns to face them, she sees it's Toma. He has his phone in his hand, so he was the one who tried to call her. He was trying to get a hold of her to walk her home, actually. Shiho had been nagging him to do it. Tsukasa appreciates it, but tells him it's not necessary. She's so close to home now, but Toma insists. Tsukasa smiles, realizing Toma is worried about her, and agrees to let Toma walk her the rest of the way home. But as Tsukasa thinks about it, she always used a separate phone messaging app to write him. But Toma is quick to explain. He asked Shiho for it. Well, Shiho forced him to actually learn it and use it, because he would never actually call Tsukasa on his own. Either way, the two walk to Tsukasa's apartment, but before Toma leaves, he asks her how it's going with the stalker. Have they done anything else? Does she know who it is? No, Tsukasa answers. They haven't gone away, but it's okay. It's okay? Toma is rightfully perplexed by Tsukasa's nonchalance. But Tsukasa knows who it is now. Now she just has to wait for them to reveal themselves. Toma's a bit annoyed, wishing that Tsukasa would just be honest with him and tell him what's going on. He snaps at Tsukasa, telling her that she doesn't have to keep everything to herself. What are friends for, after all? And Tsukasa is touched by Toma's words. He's obviously very worried about her and just wants to make sure she's safe. Even if he can't do anything directly to help her, he still wants to help her any way he can. Toma is definitely a good friend, but it seems the emotional vulnerability he showed embarrassed him. Toma is definitely a good friend and just very worried about Tsukasa, but Tsukasa's not ready to speak about it yet, so he leaves, reminding Tsukasa to lock her doors and windows. With a nod, Tsukasa heads into her apartment, locking the door behind her, as the perspective switches yet again. We're back with Yosuke, whose room is now clean. Yosuke is still hung up on the scratched out photos, wondering if he should text his sister. But what would he say? As Yosuke begins the text, before immediately erasing it while shaking his head, the doorbell rings. Yosuke jumps up and goes to the door, wondering who it could be. To Yosuke's surprise, it's a young man on the other side of the door. He's young, about 20 years old. Yosuke looks at him, wondering why he looks so familiar, until he realizes. It's the guy from his sister's scratched up photos from high school. So he knew Yosuke's sister, particularly when she was having a mental breakdown. But what is he doing here? The man asks if Yosuke is her younger brother, which Yosuke affirms before asking if this man is a friend of his sister's. Something like that, he says. The man asks if Yosuke's sister is home, but she hasn't been home in months. She moved out for university. The man is visibly disappointed by the news and tries to leave, but Yosuke stops him. If this man knew Yosuke's sister in high school, he knows what happened in high school and what made her change so drastically. The man, after some prodding from Yosuke, reveals that he wasn't Yosuke's sister's friend in high school. He was her high school boyfriend. Yosuke's sister and this man dated in high school, but he ended up hurting Yosuke's sister badly, and he has been riddled with guilt since. I guess that Yosuke's sister and this man were in a pretty serious relationship. That is, until he fell in love with someone else. So he broke up with Yosuke's sister and tried to pursue the other girl, but the other girl rejected him. Still, he refused to get back with his ex, Yosuke's sister. He didn't love her, and he didn't want to lead her on and give her false hope. Yosuke's sister was absolutely devastated by the breakup, and this was the catalyst that set off her mental breakdown. It's very sad, and Yosuke is rightfully angry at the young man for hurting his sister that way. The young man even confirms it, saying that Yosuke's sister acted like a completely different person post-breakup. But why did this young man come here now? Well, he had been trying to contact Yosuke's sister for years, but finally decided to try to come to her house to apologize to her face-to-face for hurting her so badly. Yosuke encourages the man to go see his sister at school so he can apologize to her in person. It's only right, and the man agrees to this. Yosuke is eaten away by even more guilt as the perspective switches back to Tsukasa. It's late out and Tsukasa decides to go to sleep, after making sure all the doors and windows are locked, though I'm not sure how much good it will do her if her stalker has her house key. The perspective switches yet again. Again, we're back to the person who looks just like Tsukasa. However, we still don't know their name. Tsukasa is again nowhere to be seen. Her bed is empty and made as if it hasn't been touched. This time, the Tsukasa lookalike decides to take photos of the bathroom, but the door to the bathroom is locked. They check the drawer of all the keys, but the bathroom key isn't in there. Strange. Of all the keys that could be missing, why is the bathroom key missing? After looking around, the stranger finds a strange box next to the bathroom door. Deciphering the code opens the box lid, and inside is the bathroom key. However, before they could use the newly acquired key, they realize how late it is and hurry back to Tsukasa's room. The perspective switches back to Tsukasa. It's now morning. Tsukasa doesn't have work or classes today, so though she hates the thought, she spends the day at home cleaning and working on homework. And before she knows it, the day is over and Tsukasa goes to sleep. In the dark, long after she's fallen asleep, Tsukasa hears a rustling sound. She opens her eyes, but nothing is there. But then, what was that sound? She hears it again, looking around. This time, a hand slides onto Tsukasa's bed, followed by the face of a thinly, sickly woman. Tsukasa throws herself out of the bed, trying to calm herself down as she peeks under the bed and realizes nothing is there. It must have been a bad dream. Even though it's the middle of the night, Tsukasa knows she isn't getting to bed anytime soon now, so she decides to get some water from the kitchen. As she walks towards the bedroom door, she hears footsteps coming from inside her apartment. Someone is in her living room. Tsukasa carefully cracks open the door and peeks out, confirming someone is in her apartment. Tsukasa grabs her phone, trying to dial the police, but the footsteps begin approaching her bedroom. Tsukasa has to hide. Tsukasa squeezes herself under her bed, just like her nightmare did, as an intruder opens the bedroom door. Tsukasa holds her breath as they look around her room. When she hears the balcony doors open and close, Tsukasa slides out from under her bed and races for her bedroom door. She has to escape while the intruder is on her balcony. Since the intruder is outside, Tsukasa decides not to run for the front door, in case they hear her run away, and instead chooses to hide in the bathroom. Tsukasa hears the intruder return to the living room, backing herself up against the sink as she tries to hide. This scene is oddly familiar, as it is a callback to the scene at the beginning of the game. The perspective switches again. This time, we're back to the Tsukasa lookalike. They decide they should try to unlock the bathroom today, since they have a key for it now. When they enter the bathroom, the lights are off and the bathroom is empty, no Tsukasa hiding inside. When they check around the bathroom, they notice something looks off about the toilet. When they flush it, it makes an odd clinking sound, as if something metallic is trapped in the tank. They remove the tank lid to find a crowbar inside the toilet tank. Weird. They pull it out, wondering who on earth put a crowbar there. They then check the shower next, noticing something is strange with the floor tiles. Now possessing a crowbar, they tear up the tiles. The tiles lift very easily and the stranger looks down, only saying, "I finally found her." Their face contorts into a muted sadness before they continue. "So I guess you were here all along, big sister Tsukasa." So it seems the Tsukasa lookalike isn't Tsukasa at all, but Tsukasa's little brother. And it seems Tsukasa's stalker finally got Tsukasa. That's what her brother was doing in her apartment. He was taking photos as evidence. He wanted to know what happened to her, why she was missing, and where she went. And to his horror, he found her. All alone, buried under the tiles in her bathroom. What a cruel, horrible way to die. Tsukasa's brother fills in some of the missing details. It has been 1 week since February 17th, when Tsukasa first went missing. Everyone looked all over for her, panicked and sick with worry something had happened. And this entire time, Tsukasa had been killed by her stalker and discarded under the bathroom tiles like she was filth. Whoever did this can't get away with this. But as Tsukasa's brother looks down into the hole, he has a hard time recognizing Tsukasa. She has been in wet dirt for a week, so her body, including her face, has begun to decompose at a rapid rate. It doesn't matter though, because Tsukasa's brother sobs as he cries out for his big sister. Suddenly, his phone rings. Who could possibly be calling him at this time? He answers, asking who it is. When he hears the familiar voice of his older sister calling out his name, Riku, he almost falls over. But how? Isn't Tsukasa dead? He's standing here with her body. Time jumps back to February 12th, 2 weeks before Riku's discovery when Tsukasa first began getting stalked. We return to the beginning of the game, with Tsukasa watching the news about the woman being murdered in her apartment. Time jumps forward to February 13th, a day later. Tsukasa is at school with Shiho and Toma. Tsukasa leaves, but forgets her phone in the classroom, giving Shiho an opportunity to grab Tsukasa's number before asking Toma to return Tsukasa's phone to her. Later that day, when Tsukasa is walking home, she hears the footsteps behind her. While Tsukasa runs off screen, afraid, it's revealed that it was Shiho following her, a menacing smile on her face. Time passes again, showing Shiho stuffing the gifts the stalker had left into Tsukasa's mailbox. She even waits around for Tsukasa to open the mailbox from inside her apartment, peeking into Tsukasa's apartment from the peephole as Tsukasa finds the box with the dead mice inside, just to witness her horrified reaction. Shiho laughs, deriving a sick pleasure from seeing Tsukasa scream in fear and surprise. February 14th, Valentine's Day. Tsukasa falls asleep in class during the lecture. Shiho wakes Tsukasa repeatedly, making sure she's deeply asleep before stealing the house key from Tsukasa's bag, running to the nearby store and having it copied, then returning the original key to Tsukasa's bag. Toma was sitting in front on the other side of the room. If he was paying attention to the lecture, there was no way he would have seen what Shiho was doing. Time skips forward again. Shiho is telling Toma he should walk Tsukasa home when she gets out of the lecture later, but Toma asks Shiho why she can't do it instead. Yeah, like Shiho was about to do that. Instead, Shiho uses her early dismissal to try out Tsukasa's copied house key, entering her home and taking the creepy photos of Tsukasa's apartment. It's later this day that Shiho waits outside of Tsukasa's apartment again, waiting to see her scared reaction to her newest gift. It's here that Shiho's contact falls out of her eye, the same contact that Tsukasa later finds outside of her apartment. Shiho tries to find her contact lost in the grass, but a group of women start walking around the side of the apartment building, chasing Shiho off before she can find it. And finally, February 17th, the day Tsukasa went missing. Tsukasa again hears someone in her apartment, fleeing to her bathroom as soon as she gets the chance. Tsukasa hears footsteps outside the bathroom though, and backs up until her back hits the sink. Tsukasa has time to call someone for help, but who would come in time? Tsukasa dials a number and sighs in relief when Toma answers his phone. Tsukasa is scared to speak, afraid of alerting the intruder to her hiding spot. She only whispers quietly, begging Toma for help. He seems to understand what is happening, or at least that Tsukasa is in immediate danger, since he begins running, racing to Tsukasa's apartment while staying on the phone with her. Toma encourages Tsukasa to hide as he runs as fast as he can to her apartment. Toma then hangs up the phone, most likely to call the police, and now Tsukasa is alone with the intruder, her stalker. Just then, Tsukasa hears footsteps approaching the bathroom. The door opens, revealing Shiho. Shiho calls out to Tsukasa, sighing in relief that Tsukasa is safe. She was so worried. Tsukasa asks Shiho what she's doing here, but Shiho explains she was walking by heading to their convenience store when she saw a man enter Tsukasa's apartment. According to Shiho, he took off as soon as Shiho approached, calling the police. But we know that's not true. Shiho goes quiet as she removes her jacket, flipping it inside out before putting it back on. Tsukasa asks her what she's doing, and Shiho shrugs, answering, "I don't want your blood to be too noticeable on my clothes." Shiho then races towards Tsukasa, thrusting a kitchen knife at Tsukasa. Tsukasa throws her bag up at the last moment, deflecting the knife. Shiho is alarmed. Why won't Tsukasa just die? Why won't Tsukasa just let her kill her? And most importantly, how did Tsukasa know it was Shiho who was her stalker? Tsukasa actually wasn't absolutely sure it was Shiho who was the stalker. Tsukasa desperately wanted to believe that Shiho, her friend, wouldn't do something so horrible. But with all the evidence Tsukasa collected, Shiho was the only capable culprit. It couldn't have been Aso. He was working when Tsukasa's house was broken into. And it couldn't have been Toma. He was terrified of mice. That left Shiho. Tsukasa lists out all the evidence for Shiho, showing Shiho that she wasn't as smart at covering her tracks as she thought she was. Shiho becomes enraged, almost turning into another person as she swings the knife wildly at Tsukasa. But Tsukasa bought enough time because Toma barrels through the bathroom door, fighting for control of the knife from Shiho. Toma gets cut multiple times as Shiho continues to swing the knife wildly. Toma tries to calm Shiho down, but she refuses, deciding that, since Toma is now involved, he has to die too. Toma is shocked by Shiho's words. Weren't they friends all this time? Why would Shiho do this to them, and particularly to Tsukasa? That Shiho just rolls her eyes and laughs. Friends? They were never friends. In fact, Shiho was using Toma too. She was going to torture and kill Tsukasa and then blame the murder on Toma so Shiho could escape scot-free. Toma finally fights back against Shiho, knocking her to the ground. Shiho screams at Toma to kill her, but he refuses. He and Tsukasa aren't killers. All of a sudden, police sirens can be heard. Toma called the police after hanging up with Tsukasa. Tsukasa and Toma leave the bathroom as Shiho nurses her wound for being slammed up against the wall by Toma, as if she didn't deserve it. Shiho gets up, running to the other end of the bathroom. Shiho is determined to escape before the police arrest her. Shiho hurries over to the bathroom window. Below it, the bathroom tiles are dug up. Shiho had dug up the hole to bury Tsukasa there once she had killed her, but things obviously hadn't gone to plan. Shiho jumps up, clutching the windowsill as she tries to pull herself up. The window is higher than she expected though, which she blames Tsukasa for. She vows that once she gets out of there, she'll find Tsukasa again, and she'll finish the job. But as Shiho tries to lift herself up, her foot slips, dropping her into the hole she dug up for Tsukasa. As she falls, Shiho drops a knife she planned to use on Tsukasa, stabbing herself in the abdomen with it. As Shiho tries to lift herself out of the hole, the floor tiles, which were propped up against the wall, fall on Shiho, like the lid closing on a funeral casket. Shiho tries to push the tiles off of her, but they're too heavy. Shiho can't escape. And as the last of Shiho's strength leaves her body, she wonders why all this happened to her. February 14th truly is an unlucky day for her. Back in high school, her boyfriend broke up with her on February 17th because he was in love with another girl in their high school, Tsukasa. Shiho wanted to kill Tsukasa on the day she got dumped as an act of revenge for the humiliation and heartache she suffered all those years ago. How ironic and truly sad. Maybe if Shiho had tried to get help or Shiho's parents had tried to get her help, things wouldn't have ended this way. With her final breath, Shiho apologizes to her parents and her little brother, Yosuke. If only she could have been a better daughter and big sister. February 19th, Riku, Tsukasa's brother, learns Tsukasa is missing. He tries to call her repeatedly, but all her calls go straight to voicemail. She always answers her phone. Something is very wrong. Riku heads to Tsukasa's apartment, trying to find out if something had happened to her. February 21st, Riku is in Tsukasa's apartment, taking photos of the balcony and around the living room. February 22nd, Riku finds a hidden key to Tsukasa's bathroom. February 23rd, Riku enters Tsukasa's bathroom, finds the crowbar, and finds Shiho's corpse. Of course, Riku assumes that it's Tsukasa's corpse in the dug-up hole, but we now know that it's in fact Shiho. Riku answers his ringing phone to hear his big sister's voice. Riku asks Tsukasa a million questions at once. Where is she? Is she safe? Why isn't she home? Who is buried in her bathroom? But yes, Tsukasa is safe. She's staying with one of her friends. Riku begins to cry, relieved that Tsukasa is okay. He tells her about what has happened at home. Her family filed a missing persons report, as well as Riku entering Tsukasa's home, trying to find clues as to what happened to her. Tsukasa goes silent as she realizes that Riku has been in her apartment. Then she apologizes. When Shiho attacked her, she broke Tsukasa's phone, so she had no way to contact them. Tsukasa had also been on edge since no one knows where Shiho is. She could be anywhere, waiting to attack Tsukasa. Riku then reveals what he found under the tiles in Tsukasa's bathroom to Tsukasa. After, Riku calls the police, and after an autopsy, they confirm it is Shiho. Afterwards, Tsukasa finally calls her parents, who are rightfully angry at her for not calling right away to let them know she was okay. The screen flashes once more, and we return to Shiho and Yosuke's living room. A funeral for Shiho is taking place. Tsukasa and Toma go together to the funeral, and when Shiho's parents see them enter, they apologize for everything Shiho put them through, and particularly Tsukasa through. It's a devastating sight to watch Shiho's family have to grapple not only with the loss of their daughter and sister, but to realize the horrors that Shiho committed. The guilt must be immense. Neither Tsukasa nor Toma can bring themselves to say anything, though. And in the silence, Yosuke, Shiho's younger brother, approaches them. He recounts a meeting between Shiho's high school boyfriend and him, then gives Tsukasa the cut-up photo from high school. Tsukasa recognizes it right away. It was a photo Tsukasa took with Nishida, Shiho's ex-boyfriend, while on a high school trip in high school. Tsukasa and Nishida met on the field trip, and though a few months later Nishida asked Tsukasa out, she rejected him. Tsukasa had no idea about what Nishida had done, or that he had been dating Shiho. Yosuke tries to understand why his sister would do this, telling Tsukasa that maybe Shiho was jealous and resentful of Tsukasa because she lost her boyfriend to her. But that's not a normal reaction to being broken up with. Holding on to such resentment for so many years, which manifests in attempted murder. Shiho was crying out for help and no one saw or heard her. Not that that excuses anything that Shiho did. Shiho knew what she was doing was wrong, but she let her resentment, embarrassment, and pain manifest in one of the most unhealthy ways possible, an obsession with Tsukasa, who was an innocent victim. 3 weeks pass. Tsukasa returns to a mostly normal, quiet life. Tsukasa returns to one of the places she and Shiho used to hang out and talk for hours on end. A large tree in the middle of a manicured garden. Toma sees Tsukasa staring blankly at the tree and approaches her, checking to see if she's alright. Tsukasa is as okay as she could be considering the circumstances. She's reeling from the pain and sadness of being betrayed by someone she loved like a sister. She's also angry at herself for not seeing Shiho's pain and suffering. Their whole friendship was a lie, and that's a difficult truth to work through. Tsukasa begins to cry, grieving Shiho's betrayal and violence and hate. Toma listens silently as Tsukasa unloads all these horrible, heavy feelings on him. But he's there for her and he supports her, and for once in her life, Tsukasa is willing to share her feelings of pain and suffering with someone else. After Tsukasa calms down, Toma gives her a gift. It's a thank you gift for the chocolate Tsukasa gave him on Valentine's Day. Tsukasa suddenly realizes it's White Day, when guys give chocolates or other gifts to girls they like, or thank you chocolates to girls who gave them chocolate on Valentine's Day. Toma gets embarrassed, explaining that he can't cook, so he had to buy the gift from the store. This makes Tsukasa laugh. Tsukasa peels back the wrapping paper to find strawberry-flavored cookies, her favorite. You go, Toma. A note comes with the gift too, a card. Though it doesn't translate well into English, Toma accidentally wrote something closer to my beloved X on top of the note instead of Dear X or To X. To a Japanese reader, the former comes off as being very familiar, or even a sign of endearment. Of course, Toma is flustered, stammering out that he didn't mean it that way. Tsukasa smiles warmly as the credits to the game roll. What a roller coaster of emotion, and all this heartache started with a high school breakup. It's sad, so many people failed Shiho in her life, but at the end of the day, Shiho failed herself by not reaching out for help. You can be hurt, you can be in pain, but you have no right to inflict those feelings and then lash out at other people, especially innocent victims. And I have to say, while I am a huge Toma fan, I'm glad that Tsukasa and Toma did not officially get together at the end of the game. There is so much trauma both of them need to work through, and so I'm glad that they can be there for each other and support each other without the commitment of a relationship. And let's be honest, they're definitely going to date eventually. Eventually, meaning whenever Toma can work up his nerve to ask, or maybe Tsukasa will ask him out instead. Either way, that's the end of another lore video. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to like the video and subscribe to our channel for the latest Japanese horror English game translations and obscure Japanese horror game lore videos. Until next time, take care.